Hello and welcome to this video tutorial brought to you by tutvid.com. We're going to take a look at transforming brunette hair to brown hair, and really the process we use can be done to modify any color hair to any color hair, really, any color you can imagine. So we are going to get started here with this PSD here. Drag her right here into Photoshop, and this is the image we're going to be working on. We're going to convert her to a blonde. We're going to make her blonde. Now, I have already created this channel, which is a selection of her hair. If you do not know how to create a selection of hair, I have a video which is going up the same day as this video on how to select hair. I urge you to go check it out. There's a lot more to it than just selecting hair. There's techniques in there that I use that you'll be able to bring into your workflow and use all over the place in web design, in regular photography, not just in selecting hair. So I urge you to go check it out, and you can see here that it's done a very nice job of selecting her hair, and that's what that's all about. So we have that channel there, and we're going to be calling on that channel in just a minute. So we're going to be using some adjustment layers here to make this transformation. It's pretty quick, pretty painless. Obviously it's going to take a little bit longer here the first time because I'm explaining to you how to do it, but it's going to take a few layers, and the good news is, because it's all adjustment layers, I'm going to show you how to quickly take it from her and apply it to this guy. So it's really a nice thing to know how to do, and you know, it's kind of like a resource you can throw back in your library of things that you've done and may need to do again in the past, and just put it away for use at a later date. And of course, it is something that, because we're using adjustment layers, you can always go back and tweak and mess with later and fine-tune it to whatever photo you're doing, because hey, let's face it, every photo is slightly different. Okay, so now there are tons of techniques for coloring hair, one of which is the quick and easy method. Create a new layer and just, you know, paint on it with, whoops, not the blur tool, the brush tool. Nice soft edge brush here. And we'll make it a little bigger. Okay, so we just paint, blah, 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 all over our hair, just like that. And then we would set the layer blend mode to hue or color, which I believe is slightly off screen here, and you can see that it kind of colors it. But the problem is, if we let me just delete this and create a new layer. Let's choose a blonde color. Let's go up here to yellow, and typically the colors are going to work are somewhere up here, the very buttery light yellows, somewhere over here. So let's choose like this yellow here, and let's just paint all over, and you can see a nice little bit of paint there and color. It really makes her hair look fluorescent, not the greatest, to say the least. So we're going to set that back to normal and just delete that layer. Now we're going to use that channel that I mentioned a moment earlier. So let's go layer, or not layer, select, load selection. Document is toBlonde.psd. The channel is the hair channel. Now obviously you're not going to have the same exact document as me here, but this is just, if you have just come from watching the how to select hair video, we were working with channels in there, and we saved our selection as a channel. So we named that channel here, in this instance, hair channel. We hit OK. There we go. We just loaded the selection. I'm just going to choose layer, new layer, via copy. Note the hotkey Control J. This is a really good hotkey to memorize and to utilize a lot, because virtually everything I do in Photoshop, I always find myself, Control J, Command J. So it's really good to memorize this one. Control J, layer, via copy, and you'll see what it does. You can see what it's done here. If I shut off my original layer, it's just copied her hair from this layer and just placed it on this layer, but we still have it on the original layer. You can see there I've got that layer shut off. So it just gives us a nice base. I'm just going to name that layer hair. And here is where we start applying the adjustment layers. And like I mentioned a moment earlier, these adjustment layers, you can take hair from brown to blonde, from brown to red, blonde to red, or red to green, for all I care. It can really, you can do anything. You just need to know how to do it. So we have our selection of the hair. Now we want to add a color adjustment layer. Now to add this adjustment layer, I believe it's okay. Now it's going to pop up. Good. To add this color adjustment layer, I'm just going to add it right above hair. We're going to go color balance, and the color balance dialog box pops up. For now, just hit OK, because I'm real quick going to right click on this and just choose large thumbnails. That will increase the size of my thumbnails. What I want to do is set this, keep that link, the layer linked to the mask. I'm going to set the blend mode of this adjustment layer to overlay. And you can see what it's doing there, even though it really technically shouldn't be doing anything. And the opacity to about 75. So there we go. We just added this color balance layer. We're going to double click on the we're going to hold down the Alt key or the Option key if you're on the Mac. Just roll your mouse over the boundary or the borderline of these two layers, the hair and the color balance, and just click. You can see the little black and the circles come up. Just saying, do you want to clip this layer to this layer? And all clipping means is this layer is now only going to affect whatever is in this layer, essentially. So that's what we want to do. We only want to mess with the hair. Alright, we're going to double click on color balance. What we want to do, she's got brown hair with a touch of red, so we want to make her hair look fiery red, borderline fiery orange, and that's the first step toward blonde that we're going to go. So what I want to do here is I'm going to work in tone balance down here. I'm going to choose shadows, and the first thing I'm going to do is push the reds up a little bit. I'm going to push a little bit of magenta into the hair, and I'm going to push a bunch of yellow. Alright, you can see we're already getting changes. Now we're going to go to midtones. Here I'm going to push a little bit more red, just a little bit, a tiny bit more magenta, and a bit more yellow. And then in highlights I'm going to push the yellow over pretty far. Push red, a little bit of red, and a touch of magenta. Okay, now you will notice right here on the edges of my selection, I have bordered, gotten a little bit on the face. Don't worry about that. At the very end, we're going to blend this to make it look like it really, belongs. That's just, just a little stray edge here and there. Nothing too severe. So we have our first color adjustment layer that is set to overlay, opacity 75%. Okay, now we have this nice red color here. We want to add a hue saturation adjustment layer, but we want it to be clipped to this hair as well. So there's actually a shortcut. The reason I didn't do it last time is because I wanted to set this to overlay and set the opacity to 75 before I created the layer so we could see what it was actually going to look like. I'm going to hold in the Alt key, and you get to hold it down before you even start clicking. You see I'm not clicking. Now I'm going to click on the adjustment layer icon, clicking and holding, and I'm going to choose hue saturation. This little dialog box pops up. I'm just going to check off use previous layer to create clipping mask. That's going to do this little arrow thing. Okay, check it out, doing the arrow thing. Now for the hue saturation, what I want to do is I want to shift the hue just a little bit. I'm going to use my up arrow keys here, maybe 5 or 6. You can see it's really taking a lot of the red and making it more yellow. I'm going to mess with the saturation. I really want to push the saturation down. I'm going to hold down my shift key and use my down arrow key. You can see that's moving me down 10 units at a time. I'm going to keep going down. Let's say to about 40. We're going to really desaturate it. And then the brightness, I want to push this up a little bit. So let's push it up maybe 1 or 2. Let's push it up to about 10 for now. We can always come back and adjust this later if need be. Hit OK. See, to just adjust any of these layers, I can just double click on the icon and here we are. That's the beauty of adjustment layers. Now I'm going to hold down Alt or Option if you're on the Mac, and I'm going to add a levels adjustment layer. Use previous layer to create clipping mask. I'm just going to increase the contrast of the hair a little bit by sliding my black guy over and my white guy, like so. See, before, after. We're just undoing a lot of the flattening out that our brightening in the hue saturation did, because when you use the brightness slider in hue saturation, it tends to really flatten and de-contrast your images. It just kills contrast. So the levels there is going to help bring some of that contrast back. We're going to add a few more levels adjustment layers in a few minutes, but that's the first one of a few. Now we want to add, well, here's another adjustment. I believe another levels. What's the next thing I did? Let's go levels. Create clipping mask, and yes, it is levels. In fact, we're going to just push the highlights up a little bit stronger. Okay, so just like that, you can see there's before, there's after, and when we do that, you can really see it really becomes pronounced here along the edge of her hairline. How our mask is kind of hard edged up there. But again, we're going to take care of that at the end when we clean all of this up and do all of our touch-up work. So next adjustment layer. is another hue saturation adjustment layer. Now you may be wondering why didn't I just add one levels adjustment layer for these two, or why am I adding another hue saturation adjustment layer? It's because we're literally layering these effects on top of each other. We're building from we're building off of our first levels adjustment layer and using this one to affect that this one's already started affecting. And it makes, well, number one, it makes what you're doing much more editable in the long term, and it also helps us to create effects we really can't create unless we layer these adjustment layers. You can't expect one adjustment layer to do everything for you. So we just have to simply build it up. So another hue saturation adjustment layer it is. Use previous layer to create that clipping mask and do the little arrow thing. What I have to do in this one is we're really just going to tweak the hue and saturation very little bit. Maybe move the hue up 1, 2, 3. I'm just using my up arrow keys, by the way. Maybe 4, 5 at the max. Okay, saturation, we're going to down the saturation a little bit, maybe 4 or 5. And the brightness, we're going to push the brightness back up a little bit. 2, 3, 4. Let's go with 4. Hit OK. Now, I want to add yet another hue saturation adjustment layer. I'm holding down Alt again as I make my selection. Hue saturation. Use previous layer to create that clipping mask. Here's my hue saturation dialog box. What I want to do in here is decrease the brightness quite a bit. All right, so I'm going to go down. Maybe another. Okay, 20. You can see her hair really still looks brown here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to push the saturation up. Push saturation up, up, up. Ooh, let's go a little further, maybe to 40, maybe about 35. Okay, so now it's starting to look kind of orange again. So maybe we'll mess with the hue a little bit. We're going to push it up a little bit to really make it more yellow. That's a little green. There we go, yellow, just kind of like that. Hit OK. Now, before we go on and do the next step, I want to slide back down to my first hue saturation adjustment layer. Okay, if I shut all of the rest of my adjustment layers off, these 4, okay, this is where we would be. And if you recall, when we did it, we really flattened it out. We punching up the brightness, dropping the saturation. What I want to do here is simply decrease the opacity of this adjustment layer. Let's slide it down. Oh, I don't know. If you move your mouse over the word opacity, we get a little slider. You can just pull back. Let's just pull back until it looks pretty decent. Maybe about 45, 50-ish. Say about 45. Alright, then we're going to add that levels. Push all that up. Now it's really looking fiery red. Okay, our hue saturation adjustment layer. And actually, our next hue saturation adjustment layer. Let me come back into, shut this top one off, go back into this one. Push the brightness up one more. And hit OK. And come into this guy, and you can see the saturation is far too high, so we're going to double click into him. We're going to push the saturation down, 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 up a little bit, and we're going to increase the brightness just a little bit. It's a little too bright. You can see we're getting some gray stuff happening out there, and we're going to move the hue. Oh no, we'll leave the hue at 9. Hue at 9 is fine. Okay. And before I add another layer, this is again the beauty of adjustment layers. We can come back and adjust. This looks a little bit too contrasty. The colors are too strong, so we're going to come into these levels adjustment layers and just tone it down just a little bit. Especially the darks. Okay, and come into this guy. I'm just going to pull the highlights back just a little bit. Okay, and come up to this hue saturation adjustment layer. Scale the saturation back a wee bit and increase the brightness ever so slightly. Okay, into this hue saturation adjustment layer, we can don't make it quite as dark, and saturation. Probably leave the saturation at about 8. Hit OK. So you can see it's a kind of a somewhat long process the first time of going through and tweaking all these adjustment layers to look right. All right, we got another adjustment layer here we got to add. Hold in the Alt key and select that. We're going to choose solid color. Use previous layer to create that clipping mask. Hit OK. And now it is going to pop up a dialog box. Notice it is already filled in the area because it's clipping here. So we just need to choose, I want to choose a somewhat desaturated light yellow. So by somewhat desaturated I mean not fully saturated, maybe like that. Hit OK, and we are going to set this layer to soft light. You see what that's doing? We want to tone this down, so we're going to pull the opacity back. Let's pull it back to about 45-ish, 50-ish. Okay, right about there. Looks pretty good. Now, it still looks a little too saturated for me, so I'm going to come into this, and I'm just going to push the saturation down 3 or 4 ticks. And there we go. We have the blonde hair. I have 2 last adjustment layers, if I recall correctly, that I'm going to be adding. One is curves. Again, using previous layer to create that clipping mask. What I'm doing here in curves is, well, first off, I want to decrease a little bit of the red and the green. So I'm going to go into the red channel. I'm just going to use my eyedropper and just select somewhere in the hair where I can see where the hair ranges. I'm just clicking and holding, and you can see the little dot moving around on my screen there. So I'm just going to choose somewhere about here in the middle, and I'm just going to move it down just a little bit. Just take some of that red out of the hair. And then also come down to the green channel, and we're going to take a little bit of the green out of the hair as well. You can see we're right down around here. It'll be just fine. Take a little bit of that green out of the hair. Next, we're going to go to RGB, and I want to find sort of not quite a shadow, not quite a midtone, somewhere right in between shadows and midtones in the hair, somewhere right around here. I'm just going to hold down the control key and click. It's going to place a dot there. I want to really brighten that up. Alright, I'm actually going to slide it up more toward the middle, and move it like that, and then I want to grab back where that midtone was, and I want to pull that up and just make it a little bit higher than this dot, so you can see it's sort of almost starting to flatten it out. That's really going to give us that desaturated blonde look. Let's move that guy up there. Bring him back down here. Alright, just like that. Looks pretty good. You can see it's looking much better. Again, I'm going to come over to the greens. I'm going to take a little bit more green out because it looks like there's just a touch too much green in it. That looks much better. We're going to hit OK. There's our curves adjustment layer. We're going to add one more hue saturation adjustment layer. Again, creating that clipping mask. Now, for this hue saturation adjustment layer, I just want to brighten just a hair. And I want to desaturate just a little more. I really actually don't need to desaturate much. I could probably saturate a little, if anything. Maybe even darken it up just a touch. No, I don't really want to darken it all. Just brighten it up just a tiny bit and saturate it just a very, very little bit. Maybe shift the hue a tiny bit. And now I don't want to shift the hue at all. Just set that back to 0. Hit OK. And there we go. We've got some nice blonde hair. Now, what I want to do is I actually have one more adjustment layer looking at this. I'm just going to throw another levels adjustment layer on here, holding the Alt key. Go up to levels, create that clipping mask, and I'm just going to increase the contrast of this just a smidgen, like so. Alright, there's before, there's after. You can barely tell the difference, but it's just going to add a little bit of depth to the hair. Okay, now I'm actually going to right click on this and choose small thumbnails again so you can see all the adjustment layers we have. What I want to do is select the hair layer that is clipping all these adjustment layers and shift click the layer on the top. Now I'm going to hit Command or Control G. That groups them all into a group. I'm just going to call this hair color. I'm going to right click on this thumbnail again and bring my thumbnails back to large. Now on this hair color group I'm going to apply a mask. So I'm going to hit the layer mask icon. Bam, there's our layer mask. Very cool. Grab my brush tool, set it to black, and I'm going to decrease the flow of my brush to about 15. Alright, now I'm using my tablet, so this is going to be pretty easy for me to do. If you're not using a tablet, you might have to take more time using the mouse, but I've got my foreground color set to black. We got a nice soft brush. Hardness should be 0. And I'm just going to go and start softening up the edges of my coloring. You can see anywhere where I see a hard edge, that does not look genuine, and people are going to pick that right out and say, okay, that's not right. So anywhere we see a really hard edge, we just want to come in and just soften it right up. You can see right there, we're cleaning that right up. Right there along her cheek where there's a little bit of spillover. And come right along down here. And just like that, we have transformed this girl from having brown hair to being a blonde. Now, okay, we just did all that work, but it's not just for this image. We can actually apply this to any image we want. I am going to Hit F a couple times real quick. There we go. Just bringing her into her own separate window. I'm going to Command Option or Control Alt O to get the bridge. I'm going to grab this picture of this guy who also has dark hair. I'm just going to drag him right into Photoshop. Minimize bridge. Now, you may think I can only use this stuff on one image. No, no, no. I can use it on many more than one because it's adjustment layers and it's all clipped, not just painted onto her hair. So I can just drag this whole group and drop it. I'm holding on the Shift key now too to drop it straight onto the picture of this guy. Okay, we get her hair because that is what we're clipping to right now. But don't worry, I'm going to shut this layer off. Notice I have a copy of this guy's hair that I have extracted using that same extracting hair technique. We're going to use that instead of her hair. So what I'm going to do, well, first off, I'm going to turn this back on. I'm going to come all the way down to the bottom. I'm going to grab his hair, that's layer 2, and just drag it right up and in. And I'm going to delete the longer hair. Now the image looks really messed up because nothing is clipped to this layer 2. I'm holding my Alt key and I'm just going to start reclipping all of these layers. Clicking on that little, the gray line that divides each layer from each other. Alright, so it looks kind of crazy right now, but that's really because this mask is for her hair, not his hair. So what I need to do, I'm going to hold down my Alt key or my Option key and click the mask. That shows me the mask. Oops, let me just bring this up to full screen. That shows me the mask in just grayscale, just black and white. I'm just going to fill it with white. Now I'm going to hit Alt or Option and click on the mask again. It brings me back. So now the hair is starting to look sort of normal again. But I really need to clean up those hard edges. So select that mask again. Set your foreground color to black. Again, the flow of your brush should be around 15, and just start blending that edge of the hair right into the skin, or in this case, yeah, the ear or the face of whoever it is that you're doing. And there you go. Just like that, we have taken him from dark hair to blonde hair. So it's really easy. And you could actually play around, select the whole group, and change blending modes. We could say screen, make him lighter, blonde, or reduce the opacity of that. We could say overlay to make it kind of a really strange looking hairstyle. But that's how you do it. That is how you create that blonde hair. And here we go. We've got her, and we've got him, both using the same techniques. We go from the original brunette, brown hair, to the blonde. That's how you do it here in Photoshop, and that is, I hope you learned something, and I hope you enjoy this one. Please go check out the website. That is www.tutvid.com. Thank you very much for watching.